This is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
It's one of the major topics of conversation across the country and here in Texas. State legislatures are debating and voting on new laws to govern voting. The Georgia law prompted Major League Baseball to pull the All-Star game from Atlanta. Other laws being proposed in other states and right here in Texas are generating quite the conversation and controversy because of what's in the bills and why. The nonprofit Brennan Center for Justice keeps track of what's going on nationally and reports that there are 361 bills considered restrictive, 55 of them in 24 states, with 5 signed into law, including that one in Georgia. There are 843 bills designed to expand voting rights, 112 of them in 31 states, 9 of those signed into law. Now, there are more expansive efforts than restrictive, but the thought of restricting votes certainly is attracting the most attention. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has been one of those calling out the issues that are going on here and joins me this morning. Congresswoman, thank you for being here. What's your biggest concern about SB7 and the Senate bill that passed this past week?
Well, good morning, and thank you so very much for having me. Let me first offer my deepest sympathy to our neighbors and friends in Bryan, Texas, for the tragedy that occurred and the loss of life. My sympathy to their families. Wish them well. We are facing in Texas, unfortunately, we are known in Texas as straight shooters. We tell the truth and we act on the truth. Our elected officials are straight shooters. But in this instance, this legislation and this movement and this moment is racially charged falsehoods about the 2020 election. I was speaking to a person engaged in sports, and I indicated to them, I've seen sports competition where people lose and it's painful. But the one thing in sports is not to be a sore loser. You get up and you play the game again. And what has happened here in Texas is we've got a bunch of sore losers in the legislature who are attempting to pull back the rights of all people. Because what happened in the election was giving rights to all people. For instance, in Harris County, the 24-hour voting, the many different legal voting sites, the ability to drop your mail ballot off in hours beyond the regular business hours, and the encouragement of the disabled and other persons to vote. SB7 does the opposite. It takes away the authority or reinforces that it will oversee all of the big counties like Harris. They will not have local jurisdiction over their voting practices. They will limit voting hours. And one of the most notorious, because I have been on the ballot for many, many years, is to give authority for poll watchers to actually videotape a person's private right to vote and to intimidate not only those who are assisting the disabled. And by the way, when we gathered in that press conference this past week, the representatives of the community of the blind who need assistance, they will be videotaping them. And that is a sure way of intimidating voters. And it is a sure way of stopping voters from coming in to the polls because of fear of intimidation.
You know,
That's what's it is voter suppression in its most glaring way and voter oppression.
You know, earlier this week, talking about that, in that same news conference where you were, elected officials were there saying that it was Jim Crow 2. Commissioner Rodney Ellis made a point. He said, look, this is a modern-day poll tax. I want you to listen to Republican State Senator Paul Bettencourt, who had a direct comment about that.
That's just preposterous political theater. All of this is, we need to get away from labeling stuff and talk about what's in the bill. Read the bill.
So is he right about that? Is there too much hype about this? Or what's the challenge of making people understand what the realities are about what's in this bill?
Well, I would ask the senator, a dear friend, what was the purpose of the bill? What drove them to write the bill? When we have an education system in primary and secondary school in complete collapse, when we have inner city schools not being funded, when we need more teachers, when we don't have health care in the midst of COVID-19, why would the legislature spend now almost their entire time putting forward a bill where there is no problem? That's the question that the senator needs to answer. People have a right to express themselves and however they do so. But the question is, why is Texas engaging in the pandemic of voter suppression? There is no answer, and that's why we're moving forward on federal legislation to stop this tomfoolery and to provide the opportunity for all voters to be able to vote, no matter who you are and what party you are. Like I said, when you get out into the competition of sports, the Olympics, you win some and you lose some, but you always get up and fight the game again.
We got a couple of minutes left. I want to ask about your Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act. You were the sponsor of that, recently passed. What is in that bill? Why is it necessary? And why you got bipartisan support, but you had 172 Republicans who didn't vote for it. What's in this bill?
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful as the chair of the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, Homeland Security, to have had the opportunity to write that bill some 4 years ago. It is a monumental reformative initiative dealing comprehensively with the issues of violence and domestic violence that we've seen surging here in this country. Joe Biden, I know, is excited about this bill, but it has $900 million that will come to our law enforcement to help us with rape kits and prosecution of rape. It helps culturally sensitive communities, people of color, to deal with this question of domestic violence. It closes the boyfriend loophole and dealing with providing coverage for boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. It enhances penalties for stalking. It deals with the gun loophole as well. We've seen violence with guns against families, most recently in 2020. And of course, it provides counseling and relationship for boys and men to change their attitudes as they deal with women in these stressful times or beyond these times. It is a forward-thinking initiative. It is supported by a massive number of groups, including the Houston Area Women's Center, that would get a sizable amount of money. They have seen a exponential growth in the amount of women and others who have fled and need assistance during these very tumultuous times. The Violence Against Women Act must pass the United States Senate.
Congresswoman, thank you for your time. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for what you're doing on the front lines for vaccinations, getting them in all kinds of communities in this great community of ours. Thank you for what you do for that, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me. We're vaccinating again. Thank you so very much. Every week in low-income areas.
Thank you, ma'am.
No registration. Just come.
Thank you.